Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Advisor with Stacey Chillemi. Today, I have a very exciting author on the show today. He is an amazing person. He has met the Dalai Lama, and he has written a book and explained his journey along with other things to help us broaden and expand our mind, our body, our soul, and to help us in our overall journey through life. And his name is Deepak. Uh, and he is just an amazing individual, and I'm really excited to have him on the show today. Before we begin, I just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors today, to iHeartRadio, to Speaker, and to YouTube for sharing and sponsoring this episode. Thank you so much. And if you like this episode, don't forget to share and like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much. Now, it is such an honor, Deepak, to have you on the show today. For people who don't know you, can you share a little about yourself and what you do?
Yes, first of all, Ms. Stacey, thank you for having me on the show. Big namaste to you and a big, big, big namaste to all our friends out there. So, a little bit about myself. I'm originally from India, but I'm very British trained. I did my electrical engineering MBA there. In fact, I lived in the UK for 10 years, and I started my work with a multinational company before transferring to the US in 1990. I then went on to manage a series of power initiatives at multiple points of the globe, working with some very dynamic cross-functional teams in over 30 countries. So yeah, it was very engaging work, very, very interesting people, lots of dynamic travel. Now, somewhere along the way, I came to write a book about an engineer's analysis on divinity. And so this book is called Life, the Spiritual Essence. And it is specifically designed for the tier one global professional to want to strive to be the absolute best at what they can be, how they can become a spiritual billionaire on a daily basis, and how to win against all odds in the face of increased work pressures in the global workplace. Now, this journey took me some 14 years of research, touching ultimately 38 countries. I actually sat down and counted it. I had to, it was such an enthralling journey. And it now what sparked the book? This was, that's the obvious question because you're running around building power plants, and there were three events within a 6 month period commencing end of 2008. So the first one was that I picked up a key scripture on Hinduism, and this was given the need for a timely, holistic stress management system because when you're working with interactive teams the world over, your life begins to run away from you. Like to give you scale, Miss Stacey, you have and 80 hours a week was just normal in some cases, including weekend work. So it was very exhausting. So I picked up the scripture, and being the classical engineer, in fact, it took me 5 years to read it. It was a 1,200-page book, and I read less than a page a day, with a lot of derivative studies on the side. Now, the
Wow.
next event was this was just 4 months later. I'm on a flight to Tokyo, and lo and behold, who comes and sits across the aisle from me is His Holiness the Dalai Lama of Tibet. And
Oh,
I said, wait a minute, this is so cool. So I had the perfect view of him for 11 hours. Now, what happened was just about an hour before we landed in Tokyo, he kind of encouraged me over, and I
mhm.
got his blessings.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'm down on my knees and I'm telling him, I said, sir, I know this is no coincidence, because I've started on a very the scriptural journey. And he smiled cheerfully at me, that beautiful moon face of his. And I then went on to meet him a second time 10 years later. But anyway, I came out of that, and that was the material shift. And then just a couple of months later, this time I'm now in Istanbul, in Turkey. I'd gone to visit a power plant site. And I ran into a US Vietnam veteran, US Marine Corps. And Miss Stacy, I knew there was something about this guy. And as I began to probe him, because I'm the eternal optimist and, the eternal, very inquisitive. So as I
Yes.
began to probe him, I began to realize that he was exhibiting some powers that one would typically associate with our traditional holy men and women the world over. But
Yes.
it was very tangible in nature, and that sparked the engineer in me. I said, wait a minute. So when I sat back and I looked at these three events, I had this intuition that these three events were somehow interconnected. And the term divinity was emanating out of each one of the three incidents. Be it the subtle aura of the Dalai Lama or the material energies that this Vietnam veteran was showing. And it was experiential in nature. The term energy was in there. And at that point, I said, this demands some investigation. I said, I'm not going to stop until I sort this out.
Yes.
And that sparked my journey of research of 14 years, touching 38 countries, precisely on how the substratum of energy interconnects all aspects of our existence under the corporate auspices of divinity. So, subtle and material energies, for example, nature, people, places, culture, science, and spirituality. I ended up even researching 15 religions. That's embedded as part of this within this 96-page book. And it basically just, if there were any cuffs, they came off. Now the gloves were off, and I was just going down, charging down the path of research. And I tell you, Miss Stacey, when you are sincere in your efforts and you do something out of purity, it is wonderful just how many people showed up to help. I mean, people came out of the woodwork. I estimate that there were probably north of 100 people that showed up, including some leaders who have materially influenced the past century. A case in point, Nuremberg prosecutor Benjamin Ferencz. He was the last surviving prosecutor, and he was telling me how when he went into the concentration camps, how they were being liberated, how he tried the people. And then people like that, like Colonel James Harvey of the Tuskegee Airmen. So he's become a friend of mine. Just what an honor to sit, with a man like that. And then,
Yeah.
myriad leaders, like Dr. Story Musgrave from NASA. I mean, he was on the mission to fix the Hubble telescope, so he sent me blurbs for the book. And then, various leaders from and including rabbis, monks, people just began to show up. Every time I needed the help, someone showed up. So ultimately, the book, and once again, I really wasn't planning to write the book, write a book. It was just I received so much encouragement from my colleagues at General Electric that they said, "Hey, Deepak, let's start putting it together." So during the COVID period is when I couldn't travel, and at that point, this ex-editor-in-chief of HarperCollins shows up, and he does the book for me on a freelance basis. And as I was mentioning, Mr. Stacey, I mean, talk about professionalism at its best. It excites your professional curiosity. I mean, he actually taught me that from, to grow skill sets from working power plants to being able to write a book. So the book itself, Ms. Stacey, constitutes 5 parts in its journey of examining how, and first of all, it offers a macro level viewpoint, and then it delves into various analyses. So it's in 5 parts. The first part is what I call the 6 trigger points, which is basically this took 7 years of testing and 7 years to put together, and 7 years of testing. I've been testing it every morning. I ground myself daily. It's 25 points segregated into 6 action-oriented quadrants of the mind. And it's like a subliminal box of tools that I use daily as you begin to rewire the circuitry in your brain on
Yeah.
how to overcome your weaknesses and head into the path of purity. The next 2 sections are primarily theosophical. It examines, and while the book has 15 religions, there's a structural analysis on the world's 5 major religions. And many people may think this is a comparison, but it isn't. What I did was I developed 16 cardinal pillars of what supports the iterative science and the vision behind each of these religions, and then I started to fill them out. Now, initially, I thought, oh, as an engineer, let me do a 3-page white paper and go with it. But as I began to develop, I said, wait a minute, this is really this is heavy stuff. And I'll tell you a
Yeah.
very funny story. I was I was struggling with Buddhism and Judaism, and I had to travel to Santiago, Chile. And that morning, I said, when I come back I'm going to go reach out into the community and
Yeah.
get a rabbi and a monk. And guess what, Miss Stacy? I changed planes at DC. A rabbi came and sat next to me, and a monk comes and sits behind me. And I ended up working 4 years with each one of them to develop, these structural
Wow.
tables. So each time, so I worked with the Swami, with the minister, and a lot of other holistic and spiritual experts, came in. And it took 4 years just to develop that section. Then the next section is how we now have a complete energy model in place. And what I did, this was I think possibly the most fun part of the journey, is that I picked some boundary conditions and said, let's see how this model comes together, but with the least incursion into belief.
Yes.
And so that began, and it was really and that deals with the involution and the evolution of the universe, but ultimately it maps out the journey of the confused soul into turning himself into a warrior, then a warrior into a warrior monk, then into a monk, and then back up through the channels through multiple techniques to merge
Yeah.
back to the divine source. And that was, and I came pretty close. There was only, a few bridges that I had to cross over and said, no, this, there has to be a God up there. And then the last section it's a spiritual travelogue. So what that means is that this engineer, that's myself, he describes, as pictorial stories, 22 specific experiences that he did as he was translating
Yes.
philosophical principles into spiritual reality. So just a few examples, ranging from the cacao farms in Ecuador, where, you see chocolate at the pod level, and you see how entire families are living close to nature, and up to the Atacama Desert, where they were doing the testing for the Mars rover missions, and then on to the Great Plains or Tornado Alley, because I wanted to see how energy works. And then into very challenging locations like the concentration camps of World War II. So I visited Auschwitz, Birkenau, Dachau. It was very, very difficult. And then finally, even up into the Ku Chi tunnels of Vietnam. So ultimately, this book came, those are the 5 parts of the book. And it offers a series of philosophical, spiritual, religious, technical analysis. And it's been assimilated thanks to a cadre of experts who came together.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, this book dives deep into the illiterate science behind the five major religions and modern leadership philosophies rooted in ancient scriptures. How does these analysis enhance our understanding of diverse spiritual teachings and inspire leadership practices across various professions?
So that's a great question, Sigma Stacy. So as I was working my way through, like for example, in Hinduism, there's in the Gita, they talk about the Mahabharata, which is the good between of five good versus enemies, but really it talks about the moral struggles that we have within ourselves. And so
Yeah,
there are, as a, it's because each person, we have three fundamental energies, right? Which is purity, we have a bank of passion, and then we have dullness. And the question is, at any given moment in time, where is your bank of passion pointed? Is it towards purity or is it towards dullness? See, try going for a full day without getting angry even for a second. Just see how difficult that is. And that's what I do with with the holistic table. I
yeah,
check myself off. So if I yell at a driver, down the road, I said, no, no, I shouldn't have done that. So what happened was that I examined leadership in myriad industries, ranging from defense into, obviously corporate industry and all the way even into the entertainment world. I met some of the top liners, number one and number two. And I would examine how energy, divinity, and leadership are all working together in there. And
mhm,
from now there are so many articles on leadership, but I was able to delve down into what some of the key elements of what separates leaders from the greatest leaders. And this is when you sit with a Dr. Story Musgrave, or you're talking to a Benjamin Ferencz, or you're talking to the president of India. And these were just some of the people that I happened to meet. You began to understand what made them who they are, and why they are considered so great. And There were three key points that I found. And again, this is all coming down from scriptures. You'll see it in Christianity, you see it in Buddhism, you see it in Islam,
Yes.
you see it in Judaism, and every religion does that. But there are three key elements that I found. One is humor. Always keep that inner child going in you. The second is humility. Um, and the third, which I rate above all, is an utter sense of selflessness for a larger cause. So I'll give you one example. So I mentioned I spoke with Benjamin Ferencz. He was the last surviving prosecutor of the Nuremberg trials. And I asked him, I said, sir, um, can you give me an example of what do you think of material wealth? And you know what he said, Miss Stacy? He said, oh, I've donated all my savings. Now, think, let's think for a minute. I don't have that kind of courage. But
Yeah.
look at the boundaries of fear this man crossed to be
Hmm.
able to do that. The other thing he told me was, he said, I sit with my children every single day and I ask them every single day, tell me what you did for humanity. Now, these are the lessons that you're getting from leaders. And I was starting to make all the links back into the multiple scriptures as I was going along.
Yes. My question is, we have so much stigmatism in our society about one religion versus another religion, and one is more accurate, one is more better, and you hear people get into fights because of the different religions, and they have their own qualms. Did you find from working and interviewing so many different religious leaders? Do you find that there is more similarity than difference? Because I find when I study different religions, we're really all the same. There might be some little differences here and there, but when you look at it all as a whole, each religion is pretty much similar to the other religion. It's just some things are a little bit different, but it all constitutes the same purpose.
Yes, that's an excellent question. So, if you look at some of the religions, they stem from a single god. Okay, they
Mhm.
say there are no. Some stem from multiple deity gods and deities, tier one, tier two, tier three. Some don't even believe in a god. They believe in a system of energy, like Buddhism
Yes.
primarily. It says it comes
Mhm.
from a system. When they
Yes.
asked the Buddha about God, he was apparently he was silent. But the point, man, that I found, but I found a lot more commonalities because it's all about excellence. It's all about, personal transcendence. And the one thing that I saw in all my travels is that people the world over, notwithstanding their beliefs, each one is trying to cope with the problems that they have and that they can, have to take on a daily basis to support their families. And universally, man, what I found is that every religion acknowledges that this universe, or this earth, is not our permanent home,
Yes.
that there is suffering and bondage here. So the
Yeah.
paths are on through multiple techniques to be able to lead lives of joy and devoid of fear. That's
Mhm.
what the biggest takeaway through sheer experientials.
I agree with you. I totally think that we are here for a purpose. We are here to learn. We are here to enhance, through the good and through the bad. And that I believe, there is something waiting afterwards also. We are here as a journey, and we are here to learn. And no matter what religion you are, no matter, what you believe in, we all constitute similarities. We're all human. We all have emotions. We all have, we all react and do things very similar. We just have some differences in certain areas. But when it comes to religion, if you look at all the different religions, the purposes are very similar. Like you said, like Buddhism may have energy, but still, like when you look at the purpose of Buddhism and you look at what it constitutes, it's very similar to, it's all about love, peace, gratitude, giving, kindness, humility. It's all, and if you base a lot of religions, it's all based on those aspects as well. And,
Yes. Yes, one other point, ma'am, I'd like to bring out is that you see, whether you believe in a God or you don't, the creation laws have tremendous divinity with them. And the essence of that divinity lies at the core of every human being. And it
Mhm.
is our duty, and everybody is trying in their own unique ways to try and improve their lives. And it is absolutely our duty to do so, and whatever the techniques may be, right? And you're going to learn. And, as they say, every saint has a past, every sinner has a future. So we're
Yeah.
all in this, this journey, coming along. And of course, that also, there are other topics like what they call a relative, creation, sustenance, and dissolution, and, the overall combination of good, bad, and evil, in the at an upper level. So it's a very complex, story, but these are the core principles that everyone goes from.
I love that. Now, life, the spiritual essence is described as an encyclopedia resource for professionals, offering avenues for exploration and growth. How can readers leverage the insights and the mythologies presented in this book to enhance their personal and professional lives?
So, as mentioned, ma'am, first of all, it's an action-oriented book, right? There
Mhm.
is, it's all about, and this just comes straight from, working in industry, and you have to come up with timely solutions. So, the first thing you want to do is that, and that's why I created the first, which is pretty universal, is the holistic, strategic, energetic chart. So, a very simple example. I'll give you. There are six main points in there, and then I'll talk a little bit about the others. So the first major box is all about purity, passion, and dullness. So the question is that I mentioned, how do you always stay, pointed towards purity at any given point in time? The
Mhm.
second box is all about work into worship. Watch Roger Federer in action, right? I mean, look at that intense concentration. That is divinity at work. It may not be
Yeah.
religion, but it is divinity. It is pure spirituality. How do you face your fears? The third one is about a dynamic quietude or an inner silence. How do you always maintain an inner silence? So what that means is you take your all your talents and you quieten down. You weed out all the fluff to be able to operate in the most efficient manner. The fourth
Yes.
one is to understand the interconnected nature of the universe. And even a simple thought like that, Miss Stacey, you see, when you say that a competitor of yours at work is in fact at some level within this universe connected to you, integrally connected to you, you begin to cheer for that person.
Yes.
You now preclude jealousy. You see how powerful that thought is. And then, as you start to cleanse yourself out, you now start to operate out of the higher echelons, where you are now a very spiritual, cheerful, a dynamic force to be reckoned with. And at the same time, you're beginning to lose all your progressive, your fear, all your fears. You begin
Yes.
to transcend into new heights. So that's the first mental house cleaning, that everybody should engage in. Then come all the options, right? Be it philosophical, whether it's religious, whether it's spiritual, whether you believe in energy. But it's all about taking and experiencing for yourself. And
Yeah.
slowly but surely, you begin to understand how you operate as a person. Are you, for example, very analytical in nature, or are you very energetic in nature, or are you a combination of both? Accordingly, that will help you, first of all, to balance your life on a daily basis. Two, it helps you to understand that which skills should I pick and run with, and always pick one or two skills, no more. Because
Right.
I've met so many people, Miss Stacy, who are so multi-talented, but they never devote enough time to any given one, and as a consequence, they have not achieved their goals. So
Exactly.
you have to be very single-minded in the manner in which that you progress, but while keep maintaining absolute equanimity and integrity and love for other people. So
Yeah.
ultimately, it begins. So the journey, not only does it explain how energy ultimately connects us all, right? At
Mhm.
multiple levels of existence, going from the material into the subtle, into the subtler, and then up into the causal planes, where you're now getting close to the original, to the source of creation. But it
Yes.
also maps out pathways for you to follow. And
Yes.
the one thing, Miss Stacey, I stayed very honest. I tried my absolute best not to be judgmental.
Right.
So I laid things out. I suggested an energy model. Which is pretty conclusive. It was actually an enthralling exercise to do it. I mean, trust us engineers. And
Yes.
but then, it was all about proving it, and I had some remarkable experiences along the way, as I was meeting people. And
Yeah.
I must tell you this, in my 11th year of research, I suddenly saw like a big crystal ball over my head. It was like a sphere, Miss Stacy, and it was my eureka moment. And I could see all the links like floating around like calculus in there. And it was just remarkable. And then that vision passed. And at that point, I said, I think I'm close to now beginning to assimilate the book. So it offers you a whole range of options, for you to analyze and then pick your pathway. Sorry for the long-winded thing, but I get so passionate
No,
about helping
definitely.
others.
You mentioned that when you wrote this book, you weren't even beforehand, you weren't even anticipating on writing a book. You started out with notes. And so can you tell us a little about that? What inspired you to take these thoughts and these notes and to create such a beautiful book like this?
So again, Ms. Stacy, it was the three events, which were very experiential. So I'll tell you the one that actually woke me up is
Yeah,
when I met the Vietnam. I mean, meeting the Dalai Lama is just incredible. You can sense that impossible aura of peace and pure love, and it permeates through the air. It is very, very physical, almost, and if you are observant, you can actually, you can sense it, you can almost see it. But what happened was when I was with the Vietnam veteran, he must have seen something, but he started to tell me, he says, look, Deepak, he says, you're going to do some pretty cool things. And I'm like, what is he talking about? And, we were sitting at a table and he was about 6 feet away from me. And he said, Deepak, put up your hands. And so I put up my hands like this. He put up his hands at a distance and he just went like this, and I felt this blast hit me. It was like it almost felt like somebody. Best way to say it is that when we were kids, we would go to the doctor's office and they would take a little hammer and they
yeah,
tap your knee. Well, it felt like that, but it was 10x. It was
yeah.
very material. And
Wow.
he said he's able to, take subtle energies and turn it into material force. So at this point, the engineer in me has come alive. And I said, I'm not stopping until I figure this out. And that's what launched the journey of very intense research. But a point is on miracles. So miracles, Ms. Stacy, are in fact simply a byproduct of growing spirituality. In
Right.
themselves, they're not that important, right? But people have these powers; they can exhibit. And the one thing that I remember, which I remind myself every day, that there are swamis, sages, monks, rabbis, who know to whom the universe presents no secrets. Now you think about that, how powerful that thought is.
Yeah.
So, guided by all of that, I just had to finish this journey, man. And things just started to go. And then ultimately, one of the premier swamis in India, he oversaw the entire book strategy for a period of 10 years. And so, this 296-page book is littered with about 65 illustrations and diagrams and analysis tables and pictorial story charts and the rest. And I was just having so much fun with it. And then people started saying, look, Deepak, you got something really special going on here. So like, come on, go write a book. And then, this ex-editor-in-chief of HarperCollins shows up and he put it together for me. And here we are.
Wow. Have you heard anybody mention about a success, like different successful stories that this book has done for them, or maybe has changed their view
Um,
on life, or helped them in the physical world with the way their growth is, and so forth?
yes, yes, ma'am. And my number one, a veteran wrote to me, a war veteran, U.S., and he said, I'll never forget his words. He says, Deepak, I'm on page 193 of your book, and I'm obliged to write to you to tell you that you restarted my faith. And he said, I was suffering so much from the effects of war, and he said it is the most complete dissertation on spirituality I've ever seen. I thought that was interesting. He said
Yeah.
dissertation. I said, and that's precisely what it is, Miss. An engineer from Abbott Labs, he told me, he said, Deepak, this is a double PhD you've got here, that you've got, but it took 14 years, you see.
I love it. I love it. Now, the core message of life, the spiritual essence that emphasizes hope, inspiration from this historical leaders and from innate curiosity propels us towards peace. Now, how can embracing this message enhance individual journeys and contribute to creating a lasting peace in our communities and beyond?
So the first point to understand, I mean, there's so much, behind the book, but the
Yes,
core message, ma'am, is that in each one of us, as I said, we are the essence of divinity. We are so fortunate to be born as humans because we work by intuition or informed instinct, whereas animals work by instinct only. They have to
yes,
run their cycles. So it is up for each one of us to understand that your life is so special. You have such resident divinity within you. People
yes,
want your life is special and you have so much to offer, and so come on out, right? We want to hear from you. Learn, and as you start to as you begin to accelerate in your journey, you will
yes.
now begin to rise above yourself, the I, and you'll move into the we. And there is such joy in helping other people. And
Oh, yeah.
that's what they say. This is what these great leaders have taught me, and that's what make the greatest leaders because they are totally selfless
Yeah.
in their approach.
And
So
that,
there's hope. So there's hope for each one of you. Come on out. We want to hear you. And another simple message is embellish our children and reinforce our respected elders because they've done so much for us. But our youth, they are our future, and so we
yes.
should learn to help them out.
Oh, 100%. Now, if we had to take today's conversation, you want to emphasize on some important factors that we spoke about, what are some things you'd like to emphasize to the listeners today?
That my own personal. I'll talk about my own personal journey, right? So um, when I first started, I was working on power plants, and with tremendous stress, that one had to deal with. And then I began, the journey of research, intense research and learning, and I started to develop a system. First of all, a holistic system, and then I started to get into various levels of studies. Where I
Mhm.
am personally today, ma'am, is from an intellectual perspective, there's a tremendous amount of knowledge. But in terms of the true meditative knowledge of the universe, I'm just a journeyman. And
Mhm.
there's the pathway that I see now in front of me. So I try and contain any excesses. I try and contain anger. I try and stay cheerful all the time. And I'm beginning actually to reach out and help people. And the first sign of spirituality, they say, is you becoming cheerful. So always keep that inner child also going in you. But there's
Yes.
the journey that you'll begin to find. And as you begin to improve, you will start to help people. I mean, look at your example, Miss Stacey, what you have done for millions around the world. I mean, I'm way down in the chart. So I'm a fan of yours, I have to tell you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now, your book, where can people find your book? And tell us again the title so people make sure they remember your title.
Yeah, it's so first of all, it's on Amazon and it's also on multiple. I saw it on multiple other e-platforms. If you type my name now, there's also a film actor, an old film actor in India, but I'm the good-looking one, So I think you'll be able to pick me out. But the name of the book is Life, the Spiritual Essence, and then the subtitle is An Engineer's Insights into the integrated nature of divinity. So there are five keywords in there. There's life, spiritual, engineer or energy, integrated or interconnected, and divinity or some sort of divine source. That's simple.
I love that. I love that. And you said we can find it on Amazon and there are all the other bookstores. You could just type in your name and then they could find it.
Yes, and it's life to spiritual lessons. And if people want to find me, I'm primarily on LinkedIn. I've also begun to run into some of the other social platforms, but my mainstay is on LinkedIn. You'll find me there easily.
So if people want to, ask you a question or they want to find you, where are places they can go? So they can go on LinkedIn to find you. Are there any other places? Do you have a website that you can tell us about?
No, ma'am. The best one is my email, which is life the spiritual essence at gmail.com. It's the name of the
Okay.
book at gmail.com.
I love it. I love it. Well, this has been amazing. I thank you so much for being on the show. I hope you'll come back and we can talk more because there's so many things you've tapped into today that we need in our society that I think many people have forgotten about. That some of the best leaders in the world even have forgotten about humility and being able to be selfless and to be able to really care about our elders and about our future generations and to really put emphasis on those things. And there's so many things we could talk about, and energy plays such a big role, and learn how to, work with, being able to cope with anger in a positive way and to be able to look at life in a totally different perspective and how some of the greatest spiritual leaders in the world, how all these leaders we look up to, how the one thing they all have in common and, are the qualities that you had mentioned. And, that's what makes a wonderful leader. It's not money. It's not how, the car you drive or the house you live in. It's about being selfless. It's about having humility. It's about, showing love towards others and being able to, to give back to the world and not take. And, those are the important things. And you've really stressed that today. And your book sounds amazing. I haven't gotten to read it yet, but I can't wait. And I thank you so much for taking the time for doing this. It's amazing.
No, you're most welcome, ma'am. And again, all the proceeds are for charity for children. I have no such interest in any material gains of any sort. But thank you for having me on, Miss Stacey. Very kind of you. And thank you
Oh,
to all our friends. Big namaste, everyone.
thank you. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too, ma'am.